It's recording. Okay. So hi, welcome to our panel, What I Wish I Knew as a First Year. We thought this was important to put together just because a majority of SEPA students come to SEPA with a really extensive background in public affairs, international affairs, um, both professional and academic background, but there are a few students who come from the undergraduate schools of Columbia University, whether it's Columbia College, Barnard College, or students who come within 4 months to 1.5 years from graduating from another undergraduate institution. So we thought it was important to put this together, not only for those students, but also for incoming J-termers or other students who are just feeling a little nervous about coming to SEPA. It is a really different environment, I think, from a lot of other schools. And so we're here to help ease those nerves. So I guess we'll start by introducing ourselves. I will go first, and then I guess we'll just work across. So hi, my name is Kate Meneggio-Stahl. I am a Master of International Affairs student here at SEPA, and I study Urban and Social Policy and European Regional Studies. I graduated from Syracuse University in 2019, where I majored in International Relations and Neuroscience and minored in Italian and Political Science. In my time at SEPA, I have kind of made a switch from the human rights and civil rights field into urban policy. I've interned with HUD and the 125th Street Business Improvement District while here at SEPA. But in undergrad, I worked with Oxfam Italia, the New York Civil Liberties Union, and the Council of Europe Liaison Office to the European Union. And after SEPA, I'm hoping to work for the federal government, but we'll see what happens. I guess I will ask Jessica to introduce yourself.
Hi, everyone. My name is Jessica Hernandez. I am a second year USP Urban Social Policy MPA student with specializations in Latin America regional as well as management. I graduated from Howard University in 2019 with a major in political science and a minor in English literature. And while I've been at SEPA, I currently work for, but started interning at the USAID Bureau for Resilience and Food Security. I am a congressional strategist and communications coordinator. And prior to coming to SEPA, during my undergrad, I worked in the DC Public Housing Authority, in the Orleans Public Defender's Office, and on Capitol Hill, and on not the judicial committee, but I worked in a New York representative's office on judicial issues. Oh, after SEPA, I'm going into USAID's Foreign Service.
Yeah, I can go next. Hi, everyone. My name's Ginza. I just graduated from Barnard in May, so I'm actually one of the 5-year students. I spent the last year working at Estee Lauder. I was on their corporate strategy team, which was very exciting. I majored in economics and social history at Barnard and minored in South Asian studies. And I did the UN Council on Foreign Relations mayor's office thing for a while, decided I didn't really like it all that much, so switched over to corporate. So come May, I'll be starting as a strategy intern at Bath & Body Works, which is very exciting.
Hello, everyone. My name is Sarah Bakhtiar. I go by Lola. I'm a second year ISP ICR student. Before SEPA, I graduated from Fordham University in 2018. So I had a 1-year gap between undergrad and SEPA. During that gap, I did this AmeriCorps program for 1 year at this charter school in Newark. I worked as a teaching assistant and tutor. So I taught 7th and 8th grade math. I briefly thought about teaching during that time, but ended up deciding to continue studying international studies. At Fordham, I studied international studies and Middle East studies. Here at SEPA, I'm involved in a few extracurriculars. I'm president of the Progressive Security Working Group, and a co-president for the Columbia Public Policy Review. By the end of this semester, I'll have completed 3 internships at SIPA, or during my time at SIPA. Over the summer, I worked with this think tank called the Quincy Institute for Responsible Statecraft. So with them, I worked as a Middle East policy intern, so I did research for the fellows there. And this semester, I'm working for the, or interning with the State Department's Iran Regional Presence Office in Dubai. So I'm doing that internship through the Virtual Student Federal Service Program. And I'm also interning part-time with the Permanent Mission of Afghanistan to the UN, because I've always wanted to have a little bit of UN experience. So I thought I could fit that in during my time at SIPA. And yeah, thank you for having me.
Thank you everyone for introducing yourselves. So I was thinking the way this panel could go super informal. I just have a couple of questions that I'd like the panelists to answer, and then we'll open it up for other questions or maybe other bits of advice that the panelists might have. So my first question, you can answer in any order, is what resources at SIPA were most helpful to you as you embarked on this professional development and MIA or MPA journey?
So I would say for me, I think I really relied on 2 of the first people I met at SIPA, which were my peer advisors, actually. Our CPLS group ended up being pretty close, close in that our group chat is active like every day with someone asking a question, like not even, sometimes, often it's not even SIPA related, you know, just any sort of question. They were very reliable, very resourceful, and always willing to help us. So for me, I always kind of relied on my peer advisors. And also, I would say, don't be afraid to reach out to your academic advisors for any question you have, big or small. Since I'm pretty involved, you know, on campus with student groups, I would often reach out to Dean Shapsies, and my academic advisor, Dean Wei. They're both very good with, you know, responding to emails, and, you know, they're very busy and they get emails a lot, especially, you know, with everything going on today. So I would say don't be afraid to, you know, send a reminder email if you don't hear back within a day or so.
Yeah, I can go. I think for me, OCS was extremely helpful. You know, OCS has just been an amazing resource, not only to do things like help you go over your resume and to potentially walk you through things like case interviews, but also just to give you the confidence that you need, because coming in as a 5-year, feeling like you're competing with a lot of people who have already had years of experience can be very intimidating. OCS has done a great job of 2 things. First of all, being realistic about like what your needs or skill sets are very well suited / tailored for. And number 2, I feel like with OCS, if I say I'm interested in a company, they will do everything they can to connect me to 3 people or 4 people who have gone to SIPA who are interested in that company, which is just such an invaluable resource in terms of networking and getting to know people. So I mean, I dived headfirst into OCS. My first week there at SIPA, I scheduled an appointment and I was like, hi, just please like tell me everything I need to know. But they're a fantastic resource that I really strongly recommend.
Yeah, I would say don't forget to take advantage of your professors. Go to their office hours, connect with them in any way. I know particularly for USP, we do a lot of memo writing and op-ed pieces as some of our deliverables within our classes. And so our professors are really good at not only giving feedback, but helping us get published and pushing our professional careers while we're at SIPA, but also preparing us to continue it after. So I would say definitely make sure that you take some time to get to know your professors a little bit, or just get their feedback or perspective experience.
And I'll just add 2 more things. Lola touched on this a little bit, but your peers, especially the ones with a little bit more work and life experience, are so helpful, whether it's just, you know, talking you down from a ledge after you're a little nervous for an exam, or, you know, resume and interview advice, networking advice. ask them questions. They're happy to help. And then the other resource that I've found to be very helpful are the events hosted by different offices and student organizations. Go to them, sign up for them, ask questions, be prepared when you go. They're definitely a way to learn about things that you're curious about, but maybe haven't taken a class in, or even topics that you're focusing on in classes. I would highly recommend any and all events here. So the next question I have for our panelists is, what advice do you have for networking and or finding an internship? And if you want to talk about like a virtual internship experience, that's also cool.
Yeah, absolutely. So when I was working at Estee, we moved online by, I think, like early March, and it was very weird because was lucky enough to have the experience where I worked in person. But with this new project, I think, oh yeah, sorry, I forgot to mention, I'm also a graduate consultant at Booz Allen Hamilton as a part of the SEPA Capstone project. So working on
Kinza, I think we've lost you. Someone else want to continue until Kinza's internet comes back for us?
Yeah, so I'll just pick up where Kate kind of left off about going to events. Also use those events as a time to socialize with your peers and your professors, because that's also a part of professional development and networking. You never know who has connections where, and people are generally more than happy to connect you with like a friend of a friend of a friend. That is just that amazing opportunity you never thought you were going to get. And then as far as internships go, I am here on a fellowship, so I had to intern with USAID. And I had a different application process when applying to the various missions. But I think Kinza plugged OCS earlier. I would definitely take advantage of the resources that they have about the available internships, because I get notifications from OCS and SEPA Link, and then from organizations in the federal government who tell me about when new internships pop up or new opportunities. And so that way I'm always kind of on my game and preparing to resculpt my resume for each new opportunity.
Yeah, I completely agree. Definitely, just as Jessica said, your peers are really a good resource too. I think one of the best ways to, well, me, when I was an undergrad, the word networking just always terrified me for some reason, because it's just, to me, I just pictured it always having to be super professional, always having to be wearing a suit and, like attending info sessions and asking really smart questions. But in reality, networking is this, like you attending this event is networking. And I think one of the best ways to network is, for me at least, it was joining organizations, running for officer positions in organizations, and connecting with people who have similar interests as me at SEPA. Because we're working in the same organization, working on the same mission. I remember for the Progressive Security Working Group, during one of the SEPA Fest like club fairs or organization like fairs that we have, a student stopped by and started asking, what type of events we have planned. And then he started suggesting event ideas. And then he started suggesting like similar minded organizations that our members could apply to, which I thought was very useful. And the second thing I wanted to say, internship or networking in your internships, during your internships, is also very important because, they go by pretty fast. If it's only like a 3-4 month internship, they go by very fast. And it's hard to make a connection with everyone there, especially now. So my internship with the Quincy Institute, it was originally supposed to be in person in DC, where their office is, but it turned remote kind of last minute, which was fine because it ended up being a really great internship. But one of the things that was missing, obviously, which I wish I got to do, was just sort of like small talk, small chat with everyone in the office. So in the last 2 weeks of my internship, I decided to reach out to the people I didn't get to work directly with, which ended up being a great idea because I was having, 20, 30-minute conversations with like the co-founders, CEO of the organization, which was really great. And a few of them even connected me with, I was applying to this very specific program. They ended up knowing the director of that program, so they were able to forward my resume to the director of the program. So it ended up working out. But yeah, so these are just a few things. I think the biggest thing, like I said earlier, was don't be afraid of that word, networking, and don't be afraid of sending emails and setting up meetings with people, because usually always they are willing to help you.
Kinza, do you want to try again?
Also, Kinza, it might help if you turn the camera off because sometimes I have internet problems too. It helps if I turn the video off. But
Okay, I'll try it if it goes in and out again. Hopefully it should be fine now. I was just saying that people I find are much more receptive to like networking or doing quick Zoom calls now because they are just like 15 or 30 minutes or 20 minutes as opposed to when you were in the city, then you used to have to plan for like 15 minutes of travel and all of that other stuff. So I found that people are generally pretty receptive. Two pieces of advice I would offer. First is don't be afraid to reach out to ask people who they know. So like I had someone who in my Sepals group who reached out and asked me to connect him to two people that I knew. So it wasn't even that he wanted to network with me. He wanted to network with my network, which was very helpful because I would have never known that he was interested in the kind of positions that he was interested in. So if you know someone from SEPA, don't be afraid to reach out and just say like, hey, I was looking at your network. This person seems super interesting. I'm applying for a role at this company and I would love for you guys to connect us. That's not like a crazy request. And because SEPA is such a small school, everyone, is willing to do that for you. And the second thing that I would say is just don't be discouraged because, it can feel sometimes that like, you send out, like this happened to me so many times where I sent out like 10 or 15 networking requests. And like maybe I get one response, maybe I get no responses. Like it's okay. It happens. It's not a big deal. It's also not a reflection of like how smart people think you are, what a good fit they think you are. Like sometimes people are just busy and like, you know what I mean? It's so just don't take it too personally because also I feel like when you're young, you get this thing of like, oh no, everyone knows I'm a fraud and like no one's ever going to want to take me, but just keep at it. And I promise it'll pay dividends.
Yeah, and I'll just add a couple more points echoing what Lola said about networking with people at your internship. So important. I always used to be in this mindset of, oh, it's a burden, like reaching out to them, I'm annoying them, but I actually reached out to my supervisor, who's the underwriting branch chief of the New York HUD office a few weeks ago. And I kept saying, thank you so much. I really appreciate you taking the time. I know you're really busy. And he said to me, this is part of the job. You're here to learn and I'm here to teach you. So, I would just emphasize that. Reach out. Don't be afraid to reach out. You'll learn something really valuable and make a really good connection for, even if you don't want to work for that organization, you still have a connection that can help you in other places. Then my second piece of advice, I guess, would be to do your research before talking to someone. I know that sounds, like a really simple piece of advice, but it's just amazing hearing how many people do like 5 minutes of research and they're like, great, that was good. Look at LinkedIn, research the organization, ask others, like Kinza said, like reach out to people at SEPA and say, hey, do you know anyone who works here? And even if you can just schedule 10 minutes or send an email with a couple of questions or a message on LinkedIn and say, hey, I'd love to know this specific thing. I'm prepping for an interview here. Let me know if you have an answer to this question. And also, I think doing your research allows you to be more genuine in your interview or in your cover letter. Um, with HUD, for example, I did, I think, like 15 hours of research for this interview because I was so nervous and I just really wanted the internship. But because I had so much information about HUD and about this office in particular, I was able to say, okay, here are all the things I know you do, and here's my personal connection to it, which I think they really, really valued. Um, and also, I guess on the note of being genuine, this is kind of turning into a three-part answer here, but just when you're talking to people and networking with people, like everyone I think has said, it doesn't always have to be like this super, like stiff, uptight conversation. You can have a little bit of fun. That's okay. I think especially right now, people are looking for a more human connection, and it's not always natural to be this like super professional person. Like, yes, obviously be professional, but you don't have to. Not everything has to be super put together. For example, just the other day, I spoke to a fellow Syracuse alum who's class of 2020, and she works for the Small Business Association, but wants to move over to HUD. And it was just such a genuine conversation. It worked out so well that we decided to set up monthly networking meetings, which is something I have never done before in my life. But if it works out, it works out. And I think a lot of it has to do with you just being honest, being open, and just being yourself. Don't try to, craft yourself into someone that you're not when you talk to other people.
If I could just,
Great.
one point that reminded me of is, I think also once you reached out and if you had your initial call and whatever, and this happened to me last week where like I applied for something, I reached out, this girl and we did some networking, had a call, I didn't get the position, but even after I didn't get it, I still texted her and I was like, hey, listen, I just want to say thank you so much for your time, because your investment in me, like it really makes me believe that at some point in the future, like I might have a future here, and like that's very valuable to me. So even following up, regardless of whether or not you got the position, and just saying like, hey, listen, thanks for the time that you took out. It really makes a difference for people. And then as soon as they see a position open up, they're going to think of you, which is something that becomes very helpful.
I would also like to add one more point, sorry, before we move on, Kate. But I know we've given a lot of advice about active networking, but being at SEPA itself is a passive networking opportunity. Every interaction that you're having is a potential new relationship that you're bringing into your professional career. And so advice that I know Mike and Carmelina gave us when we started is that, the professors are really watching what it is that you're doing, not like, Big Brother or anything, but they notice when you show up at OCS events or when you go to various USP webinars or panels. And that personally has helped me because I know I was in USP classes my first semester at SEPA. And then by the time I got to second semester, I started my core class, and the director of the concentration already knew who I was by the second class, that she was like, I'm offering you a job. And so that was really helpful to me to know that, okay, I was in classes before, and this concentration is now talking about me through the grapevine. And clearly I have a well enough reputation with them that it's, turning over tenfold. So
Great
yeah, just be
addition.
aware of like how you present yourself too, and being active.
Love that. Great advice. Great. So my next question, maybe a difficult question, but how has your projected career path changed since coming to SEPA?
So I could start off with this one. I was super open-minded to everything when I started at SEPA. I studied international studies and Middle East studies in undergrad, and you could really do literally anything with those two majors. So like I said before, immediately after I graduated from undergrad, I thought I would want to go into teaching, and then I thought, okay, actually no, I want to continue studying international affairs. So when I started at SEPA, I thought, okay, I was actually looking into internships with the CIA and the NSA and in other intelligence agencies. And also I was thinking about, internships with the Department of Defense. And and maybe, you know, a career at the UN. So I was super open-minded. But, you know, after taking ISP classes, taking ICR conflict resolution classes, I'm actually focusing more now on, and also honestly, I realized this through my internship with the Quincy Institute. I'm realizing I'm not really interested working in any of the intelligence agencies or with the Department of Defense, but I know that I wanted to work with the federal government. So now I decided on State Department or USAID, like I mentioned earlier. And so it was really mainly through my internship that I realized this, but it was also through my classes that I realized, I don't know if I really want to go the, you know, it's sort of a typical ISP route, which is, you know, work for DoD or an intelligence agency. But yeah, I would say it definitely helped me narrow my choices.
I think for me coming into it, I kind of already knew that I didn't want to work at a multilateral. I had seen the pace of the work there, and it was just not like my speed. So learning a little bit about all of the different ways that you can like sort of apply the things that you learn at SIPA. I mean, something like makeup and beauty products and like international relations is not a connection that people immediately draw. But once you start to think about how all of these businesses are beginning to expand their global arms, particularly in something like COVID, where consumer traffic has stopped for a large part in the United States. It's been really fascinating for me to think about all of the different applications of international relations theory. So, you know, even if I want to think about going into something like development consulting next, or, you know, impact investing, there are just so many different things that you can do without having to do the large multilateral work, right? And coming to SIPA was it was the one thing that I gleaned from my first 2 weeks is I was like, I don't have to go work for a, you know, UN, some US department, you know, the World Bank, because those things are very exciting and really beneficial for some people, but I just needed something that was going to be a bit quicker because I have a very short attention span.
So my career path didn't change at SIPA, it changed right before SIPA, but this kind of goes back to what we were talking about before. So while you're at your internships or whatever opportunity it is that you have, I recommend kind of like Kate and Lola were saying earlier about sitting down and talking to the people on your team or in your office. I always make sure that whenever I enter a new office, I schedule 30-minute to 45-minute sessions with every single person on a team. If you're in the same position as me, that's fine. Like, I'm not discriminating based on title because everyone has something individual to offer. And so while I was working on Capitol Hill, my chief of staff became a really good mentor to me, and she introduced me to the Foreign Service. And this was just in the middle of my undergraduate, not the middle of my undergraduate career, but the middle of like my senior year. I took time off from school to go work on Capitol Hill full time. And she was kind of like, you should consider going into the Foreign Service, because I was thinking about law and intelligence. And I was like, I don't want to join the military. She's like, the Foreign Service is not the military. Sit down, like, go apply to this, whatever. And so that's how I ended up at SIPA when I made that transition to the Foreign Service right before. But it's not something that I had originally envisioned myself being at USAID. I knew I always wanted to be in the federal government, but more so working on legal aspects and then transitioning more domestically to criminal justice work. And so now, like, I hope to continue doing democracy and governance work, but on an international capacity. Coming from New Orleans, I think like people really grow up in a bubble, and some of the most successful people in New Orleans government, I find, are people who leave the city and go learn about the world and about how urban policies are implemented elsewhere, and bringing that like creativity and innovation back to the city in order to better our home. Yeah.
Awesome. And I'll just talk very briefly. when I was in undergrad, I didn't know what I wanted to do. I changed my major 4 times before the end of my second year, and then finally kind of fell into the international affairs field after studying abroad like a million times, it felt like. So I came to SIPA to find a more focused career path, and I think I've definitely found that here. I know I really wanted to transition from purely international affairs more towards domestic work inspired by international affairs and policies in other countries. Like I just said, I spent a lot of time in Europe, and I was really inspired by the European social welfare scheme. And I was like, oh, I should go to grad school so I can help pick that up out of Europe and like plop it down here in the US. And so far, that's what I'm doing. I really wanted to study health policy, which I remember having a conversation with Jessica at the beginning of our first year saying, oh, blah, 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 we're both USP. That's so cool. What are you interested in? I said health policy. So I'm specializing in social policy. And the conversation went, oh, that's actually under urban policy. So I started with urban policy and then ended up moving towards the housing industry, which I think is not that far removed from health policy. And the class that really helped me like get into the track that I'm in right now was Dr. Lagunis's class, Comparative Urban Policy, Cities Outside of the Western Core. Huge plug for that class. Even if you're not interested in urban policy at all, would highly recommend any class with Dr. Lagunis. He's fantastic. Tell everyone you know. Greatest professor I think I've ever had. Great, and I just have 2 more questions, and then I'd like to open it up to questions from anyone who has them or other bits of advice from our panelists. Kind of a 2-part question here. Now that you're in your second year at SIPA, what do you wish you did differently during your first year? And looking ahead, how will the actions you've taken at SIPA benefit you in the future? Huge question.
Definitely a huge question. So what I wish I had done. So obviously, for the first years that are here joining us, your first year is very different from our first year. We were lucky enough to have a lot of in-person social events planned by SIPASA and a few other organizations at SIPA, and also, like the concentration and the school itself. So one of the things I wish I did was attend more of those social events, those networking events where the purpose is literally to get you to meet other SIPA students. Although I'm sure that, or I know that they are still organizing like virtual events. So I definitely encourage you guys to attend those if you haven't yet. I think that's one of the best ways that you can network with other students, network with professors, network with faculty at SIPA, because I think that's one of the biggest things. Another big thing too that kind of goes along with that is I don't think I took advantage of my professor's office hours enough. I think I could have definitely worked harder in trying to build closer relationships with my professors and asking them for advice. I think though I had very severe what do we call it? Imposter syndrome my first year. So I just thought, like I had nothing to offer to my professors. I thought that, they were more interested in the students who had years and years of experience with, the Department of Defense or on Capitol Hill or wherever, you know what I'm saying? Or it was like JP Morgan, but that's not true at all. They definitely want to hear from everyone, and they want to help you succeed, and they want to help you decide where you want to end up. So I would say definitely don't be afraid to reach out to your professors, attend their office hours, even if it's like a small question, because then that could turn into a conversation, and then the second question was, how do I think SIPA will help me moving forward, sort of, something like that. So I think for me, again, going back to networking, it's very, very important. I think the connections I made with my SIPLS group and with Kate and Jessica and Kinza, you know what I mean? Like everyone that I met at SIPA, I think is going to help me moving forward, because everyone is so, is interested in different things. so sorry, one second. And another thing too that I would urge you all to do is to take non-SEPA courses if you have the space. I'm taking one of my favorite classes that I've ever taken at Columbia is called Gender and Sexuality in the Arab World. It's, I think, in the MISOS department, the Middle East Studies department. So I think just having it kind of gives you a more comprehensive background, you know what I mean? And as a policy student, I think it's important for us to take non-policy courses. So I think this class itself is also going to help me moving forward. And yeah.
Yeah, I think in terms of what I wish I had done in my first year, echoing what Lola said, it's just important to remember not to let yourself be intimidated by anyone else in your classes because you think that they have significantly more experience than you. Everyone got accepted to the same program because you're all smart. And so like thinking that, you know, a certain professor's only going to want to answer certain students' questions or that you like asked something dumb so it's too late for you to make a good impression is just really silly. So don't be intimidated by, you know, people who have, you know, served in the Navy for 8 years. Like it's not that deep. Like you're also like very smart and intelligent and like you're very capable. So don't let that intimidate you. That's probably my single biggest piece of advice is even if when it comes to like board positions and trying out and filling out applications, I have never, you know, felt bad about the fact that I filled out an application and I didn't get it. I only feel bad when I don't fill out an application because in my head, I've already canceled myself out as a candidate, you know, like it's 100% of the shots you don't take, right? That's the main takeaway. In terms of how I think it's going to help me moving forward, I think that it's just about thinking about how you can apply the different lessons that you've learned. So if you've learned something about the way that countries tend to move or the way that different states interact with each other, any of those things, although those seem very theoretical, they also have a lot of practical applications for when you see things or when you view things in sort of current events wise. I would just make sure that like what I do at the end of every class that I take is I make a bullet points of like 4 to 5 things that I've actually learned. Like, you know, you can learn 1,000 different things when you're doing the readings, but like these are the 4 or 5 things that I'm going to be thinking about after this class ends and after I move on for the semester. And if that's what you get out of classes, that's good enough, you know? So I wouldn't, you know, stress yourself to remember like every single thing about the history of a country. Like it's just about taking away those 4 or 5 messages and making sure that you apply them in unique and interesting contexts.
I would definitely say that my first semester at SEPA, there was a lot of like self-isolation, not because I didn't want to hang out with anyone, because everyone was always hanging out in the library doing work. And I was like, I don't want to sit here till 2 a.m. doing micro homework, which I wasn't even in micro. So I would always just like go home. The way that my classes were spread out, I would have nap times at home. And so that like took away from my ability to socialize. That changed my second semester, but also COVID happened. So I would say what I wish that I did my first year was that I had been more socially involved. But that being said, getting involved in student organizations like Lola did. So I'm vice president of CPASA. I'm a PA for USP, and I'm part of SEPA's anti-racist working group. So I do a lot of work with my peers of color, but also like all of the different student organizations on campus with all of the USP kids and well, not kids, adults. And then I do a lot of work with the administration. So that has been both like personal and professional socialization after that. And then what was the second part? How will it help me later? Through these interactions, I've actually developed some really strong friendships that I think will last beyond just being a professional network. And I think that that's what I'll really be carrying away from SEPA.
Sorry, just one more thing I forgot to mention. The other really great takeaway from SEPA is that you get to learn how you work in a group, which is extremely important because basically every homework assignment that you have at SEPA is a group project, like whether that's micro homework, macro homework, quant, project-based stuff, everything is a group project. So you get to learn a lot about what your own working style is. And like, you also get to see yourself as the villain sometimes. And you're like, oh, this was my fault. I actually like to do things at 3 a.m. So sorry to everyone else in the group. It's really important for you to know your own working style, because that'll determine a lot of where you go after SIPA. So if you know that you're someone who likes more project-based outcomes versus you like to just have something done at the end of the day and then go home and not have to think about it, versus like there are just a lot, or certain people that you like to work with, certain personalities that you don't like to work with, that stuff is going to be very important in evaluating where you want to go post-graduation. So thinking about how you work in groups is a really invaluable skill that I think I'll take away from SIPA.
And just echoing what Jessica said, I also wish I just did more in general. I didn't join any student organizations, which was a piece of advice given to me by 2 graduate students at the Maxwell School at Syracuse during my senior year of college. They told me, you've already done the student org thing, don't do it in grad school. And looking back, I'm like, wow, that was the worst piece of advice I've ever been given. So I wish I had joined student organizations, and also like Jessica said, when classes were done for the day, I either went home to take a nap, or I went to work, or I did homework. And I wish I hadn't done that. And I was really starting to like find my stride in the spring semester, and then COVID was like, hello. So that was really unfortunate. So even though everything's online, you can still socialize with people. There are events like this. There are events happening all the time. Go look on SIPA Link. Go look on campus groups, your class WhatsApp, Facebook page. Events are being posted everywhere. Go to them, and join student organizations so you can be a part of planning those events and meet other people. And I also wish I had found a better school work-life balance, which I think was definitely a spillover from undergrad, where I was like, yes, I can sit in the library for 16 hours and do work without getting up once. Don't do that. Just like, yes, you have a lot of work, but you also need to find time to like do things for yourself and do things with friends, and just to, like step away from your work for an hour or 2. I think that's really important. And I think an environment like SIPA, which is very competitive and everyone is working really hard, it can be difficult to remember that, but don't overwork yourself. It's not going to get you any further. In fact, I think it's just going to do you a disservice. And then the last thing I wish I did more my first year is celebrated my accomplishments. I think everyone has touched on this. Even an accomplishment as you got into SIPA, that's pretty incredible. Don't like discount that. I know at the beginning people would say to me, oh, like, what are you doing right now? And I'd be like, oh, I go to school in New York. And that was it. I wouldn't tell anyone I went to SIPA or Columbia. I was super like, this is weird. But shout it from the rooftops. It's cool. And you should be really proud of yourself. And even if like you get a good grade on a paper, or, you weren't understanding a topic and all of a sudden it just clicks for you, celebrate that. It's really exciting. It's worth being proud of. And then kind of going forward, I think that just being at SIPA has made me more serious about my career, which I think was the point of coming here. And so I think as I start, really ramping up my job search in the next couple of months, I think I have a better grasp on what it is that I want to do. Like Kinza said, what type of work I'm interested in doing and what my work style is. And like Jessica said, I've made a lot of really great friends here, lots of super close relationships that will persist through time. It doesn't have to be a professional relationship all the time. It can just be a friend. I think that's really an important part of SIPA. So yeah, if anyone has any questions, feel free to just ask. And if any of the panelists have other like little bits of advice that didn't really fit into one of the questions, please go ahead.
I have
And
one
thanks
last
for coming.
tidbit. Oh, sorry. I have one last tidbit just because I know like someone touched on imposter syndrome earlier and just being intimidated by other classmates. But honestly, I just tell myself, everybody's here for a reason. You're here because you don't know what I don't know. Like, we're both in the dark about the same thing. We're both pursuing the same MPA, MIA. So there's nothing that puts you necessarily at more of an advantage than me. As we're in this program, you just have a different experience. You bring something new to the table. And so I think that, like, when you remind yourself that, especially first year, that like everybody is in the same boat, whether it's an experience because you're dealing with imposter syndrome, or you're maybe a little bit nervous or introverted about interacting with other people. Well, everybody else is also a first year. So, hi, Kate, you're a first year too. You don't know anybody? Great. Well, we can be friends because we can both know nobody together. And I feel like it's just kind of, when you kind of take that attitude, it goes over a lot easier when you're trying to integrate yourself into SEPA.
I've also found that, first of all, if you have a professor who you really like and enjoy, please like try to become friends with them. The thing that's different about grad school is that everybody's looking to, like, even your professors, it's not the same undergrad relationship where like there's a very strict line between your professor and you. They joke that in the Quant 1 classes after your first midterm, Doru, if either of you have him, takes you out to drinks, like takes the whole class out to drinks at the bar right next to campus. Like, I've just emailed professors before and been like, hey, I just wanted to let you know I really appreciate this class and I appreciate how much effort you've put into planning it. And like, you're awesome. And that's it. That can be the whole email. It doesn't have to be like, give me a job. It doesn't have to be anything like that. But it's very helpful to everyone involved if you like give your professors good feedback and try to let them know when they're doing a good job, because it's also so difficult over Zoom to determine like if you're doing a good job, if you're speaking too much, all of this other stuff. So don't be afraid to reach out to your professors and just say like, hey, just want to say like, you're super cool and I really like your work, and that's all.
Are there any questions? I wanted to add one thing, but I do want to get to questions also.
I have a question. I'm sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
So it's my first semester, and I'm really struggling how to divide my time in the job search and my classes, and just figuring out what I want. Because like all my experience, it's in government, and one topic I'm really interested about is education policy. But education, it's a big, umbrella. So I'm still trying to figure out which part of education. But I really feel overwhelmed by the classes. I didn't transition right from undergrad. So I've worked before coming to SEPA. So I haven't been, a while taking exams and all these essay things and reading a lot. So I'm really struggling. And I feel I'm putting a lot of time on my classes, not really into the professional aspect, like narrowing down what education thing, like looking up for internships. I mean, I got my resume done, but then I haven't really put much effort during the week. So I just want to like not pin advice for, this person is struggling. What can I do to sort of divide my time better between this job search? Because I really want the SEPA experience to sort of excel some skills for, a better job position for me, especially in education aspects. So thank you.
What's your concentration?
EPD.
So for me, I think honestly, one of the best resources we have at SEPA is SEPA Link. So I don't know if you guys get emails. I think you do have to set up, how often you get the emails, but I set it up so every single week I get an email from SEPA Link that literally sends you the spreadsheet with upcoming deadlines and new deadlines for new job posts and new job postings. And it's a very long list, very diverse, group of companies and organizations. I thought that was super helpful because I started to do research on think tanks that I've never heard of. I started doing research on nonprofits that I never heard of, and I was like, oh, wow. And it kind of like that research kind of introduces me to other companies and organizations that are similar. So that doesn't mean though that you need to apply to all of them every single week, because that means that, you're taking away from your study time. Because I'm like you, I spent most of my time studying. But I think if you reserve like one like Sunday, like just doing fixing or editing your cover letter, editing your resume, because sometimes you do need to tailor your resume to the place that you're applying to. So one of the things that I do is I have like a master resume saved on my computer that basically lists every single job and position I've ever had in my entire life. Because sometimes some things aren't relevant for certain jobs, you know what I mean? Or certain internships. But yeah, I don't think some people do this. Some people apply places every single week. I don't know if you need to do that because that just stresses me out. I kind of just reserve like a couple hours, maybe every 2 weeks, every 3 weeks, and really, really apply to a bunch of places. Because yeah, I totally get where you're coming from. But CEPA Link helps. I don't know if everyone else gets the weekly emails or how you guys do it, but
I would go talk to your concentration director or one of the PAs there. You can also reach out to me or to the Urban Social Policy Director, Esther Fuchs, because USP has a lot of education policy classes and curriculum as well. So I would talk to them because not only can they help point out the classes, but reaching out to those professors and having conversations with them will also help you narrow down kind of what it is as part of education policy that you're interested in. And from their experience, they can connect you or refer you to different organizations that you might be more inclined to apply to. And so instead of sitting there for 20 hours scouring Google for anything and everything that has the word education as a buzzword, you can really like focus your search, because we're all here to work smarter, not harder. Okay. So take that opportunity. And when you reach out to people as well, you have a resume already together, send them the resume and ask them to look over it, because they'll be able to do comments or track changes in it. And that will also help you kind of tailor your resume for each opportunity. Because like Lola said, like not everything is relevant all the time, or some things are more important or should be highlighted depending on the job description. And so you want to make sure that I suggest that you be efficient. As someone like I'm working full time right now, plus like doing 16 hours in credits. And so trying to balance all of that on top of doing like like 3 different student organization things, I literally have to time block my schedule every single week. And so I try and figure out ways that I can do things all at once or just make it as easy for me as I possibly can.
I would also just add, don't feel compelled. I know this isn't like very probably like approved advice, but don't feel compelled to like do a deep reading of every single class's reading every single week, because it's often not, it's often not going to be valuable, especially if you're in like a 60, 70 person, lecture and you're just trying to like figure out what's going on, but you've done like 4 hours of reading for that week. There's some seminar classes where, there are 15 kids, everyone active participation. Those you should for sure do all of the readings for. But don't feel like, oh, if I, don't do the reading for this 1 week for this one class, then like I'm guaranteed fail. Like, you know what I mean? It's you're like, how involved each class is participation wise. And like, I always think about really like how much reading I'm doing for that class based on the amount of participation it's going to require from me.
I would definitely agree with everything that's been said. I know the general rule is you should treat your job and internship search like you would treat a class. So you would set aside a time every week, but that's not always realistic. When you're doing 500 pages of reading, and then you're writing three papers, and you have to work, or you have some other family obligation, or this, that, whatever. So I really liked Lola's bit of advice, even if it's every 2 weeks, every 3 weeks, and you're looking at these CEPA Link spreadsheets that come through every week. I think that's still really helpful. And if you do decide to set aside time every week for your internship and job search, you don't have to spend that time applying to jobs. It can be, okay, I'm just going to tweak my resume or work on my cover letter for like 45 minutes. And then you start getting all of your things ready, or even just like, all right, I'm going to make sure I have my transcript ready to go, or some like a letter of recommendation just so I have it. I think that's still time well spent. And that way, when it comes time to apply, you can just upload everything, tweak it a little bit for the application. Like Jessica said, work smarter, not harder. It's all about being efficient and then just making sure that you're prepared when the time comes to actually hit that submit application button.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate all of your insights. That was great. Thank you.
Yeah. Any other questions? I know we're 1 minute over and I want to be respectful of everyone's time.
I have a very quick question. First, I just want to thank everyone for putting this together. This was amazing. It's exactly what I needed. And I feel very lucky. I only figured out that this meeting was taking place maybe 4 minutes into the meeting. So I was at the right page at the right time. Like, oh, great information. So this is a rather technical question. I'm going to be speaking to my course advisor next week, and hopefully I'll figure that out then if it can't be answered. So I actually started at Columbia this past fall in an MSW. So I'm studying social work, and now being accepted into SIPA means that I'm going to be pursuing a dual degree between international affairs and social work. I'm not sure if I should have figured this out already, but I'm still unclear as to the implications of, once the ball is rolling. I know I'm SIPA full-time to begin with once this next term concludes. What's the implication of the job internship component of the SIPA degree if you're also pursuing a dual subject, which is going to require field training, placement, the equivalent of either working part-time or full-time on top of that?
Jill, do you want to field that question?
Let me jump in. So let me see if I understand it correctly. So you're asking if, so with the MSW, you have required field work. And so you're asking, if you have that, and then plus SIPA asks that you are required to do a SIPA internship during your time. So you're kind of wondering how those work together. So
Yes.
there's actually, you may apply for a waiver for your internship requirement. There's a form. We can connect you with, our administrator who can get you that form. And then you will indicate that your program requires work. And therefore, I am asking for a waiver for this internship requirement. And then we'll just provide a transcript or something from the MSW program and stating that you have a required work component of that degree.
Okay, if I can ask a very quick follow-up.
Yes.
It seems like the internship is really an invaluable part of the SIPA experience. It's really what motivates a lot of people to pursue it. Is there an avenue for people who are crazy enough to attempt to fulfill, the field placement requirement or whatever other requirement for the degree and try to make an internship happen? Is there a precedent for that? If I wanted to waive the waiver.
I would say we certainly would not force a waiver on you. So if the internship requirement requires 120 hours worked within a term. So within the spring, summer, or fall. So if you are able to complete that, then you can submit it in order to fulfill the internship requirement. I don't know, I'm not intimately familiar with the dual MSW program and SIPA and kind of how your next year or 2 years or whatever may look like. So I don't know when it would fit in best to your schedule. So that'd be something for you to consider. But absolutely, I would say anything's possible depending on, how much you're able and willing to take on.
Great.
Definitely
Thank
check.
you.
Oh, sorry. I would definitely check with your advisor because I know dual degree students have particular paths or schemes, whatever. And so there are certain things that SIPA students are required to do that dual degree students don't have to. And as far as the internship goes, if you can get a waiver, that's great. Also, the capstone is just as satisfactory because I think you have to do that as well. You don't need to do, like, if you have the option to only do one, you don't need to do a capstone and an internship because you're going to get the same thing out of it.
Got it. I understand. That's very helpful. Unfortunately, I have to jump off the call. I just really wanted to also thank you one more time. This was great. I really appreciate it. Please, everyone, have a great Thanksgiving holiday.
Thank you, you too.
Thank you. You too.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, girls. It was really nice to
Thank
meet
you.
you all.
Yes,
Have a
it's nice to meet
Nice
weekend.
to meet you
all.
too.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye. Thank you so much, y'all.